Right, we are looking at the iconic Thor 337 today. The first issue on the series by writer-artist Simon Waltonson. And where do we begin with this? Probably the cover. We have a very well-known and famous cover, the introduction of Beta Ray Cyrus. Something else we have is the also famous slow build teaser that kicks off the run. A mysterious hint at stuff to come. Something enormous and powerful and fiery. We don't know what at this point, but over the course of Simon Waltonson's first handful of issues, we get more of this until it becomes clear to us what we are seeing. So Simon Waltonson, he is best known for this Thor run. Long after we are all in the ground and gendered bathrooms are eliminated, Simon Waltonson will still be the guy who did the best Thor comics. Before Thor, he was known for Man Killer at DC and Alien, the illustrated story, both with Barney Baldwin. He had also penciled Thor briefly a few years earlier, but it is his run as writer-artist that cemented him and his place in the industry as a large, innovative talent. We cut to Earth and are introduced to our title character, Thor, in his Dr. Donny Wall Blake identity, an identity we will be getting shot of pretty soon. What I want to remark on is how expertly Simon Waltonson begins his run. It's treated very cleverly and almost with the idea that he knows this is going to be the run people are going to check out. We get a very pristine introduction to things in his first issue. You don't have to have read Thor before. You don't even have to know any of his lore, really. Simon Waltonson will introduce you to Donny Wallblake right here. As a starting point, it is superb. This was my starting point too. This was the first Thor comic I read, or properly read anyway. Sadly, it was the recoloured version. Marvel recoloured the entire run for reprints. And Lord Almighty, it is easy to scoff at that and hate it. But I do want to say, it's not as bad as it could be. I still prefer the original colours, but they did at least go for a colourist that somewhat meshed with the work. Not that prick that has been ruining Alan Silvestri art for decades. Thor gets called on, or rather, he gets abducted by S.H.I.E.L.D. Lovely shot of the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier there. Samuel L. Jackson, he wants Thor to investigate an alien spaceship that is heading straight towards Earth. It is a very straightforward plot. Another wonderful thing about this run is that it starts with a story like this. You're not thrown in at the deep end. We have got Thor going off on what sounds like a simple mission. The way that Simon Waltonson draws Thor is also remarkable. This is the same design that Jack Quimby was drawn all those years ago, and Buscema after him. But Simon Waltonson interprets parts of his costume, his boots, his cape, as much bigger, and it makes Thor look quite offbeat. I'm sure some people would say that it is off-model, but it is part of how Simon Waltonson draws a lot of characters or costumes. But it really works for Thor and the other fairyland gods. And it is another example of how this run came along and gave Thor a real fresh feeling spin. And now let's talk about fairyland. We only have a page and a half in this first issue that properly focuses on fairyland and this expansive world. And that is absolutely perfect. We have two characters, Sieve and Baldric. They are set up tremendously for new readers. Sieve is pensive about her relationship with Thor, and Baldric is having a midlife crisis. Baldric, well, he's having a Midgard life crisis. That is a fantastic play on words, but it doesn't really work here. He is neither on Midgard or from Midgard. If it was Donny Waldblake having it, that would be great. He's having a Midgard life crisis. But Baldric isn't from Midgard. Baldric will become, I wouldn't say a breakout star, but he does subsequently get a miniseries during this run. For ages I didn't like Thor. I didn't like fairyland and all the fairyland mythology. It was all Lord of the Ringsy type of fartle bum from Eldenvale. It never appealed to me. I didn't read Thor comics for years because I didn't like Thor and I didn't want to read his comics. The only part of Thor mythology I had any interest in was Amanda the Enchanter, and the rest could go burn for all I cared. Simon Waltonson tackles that problem, or that possibility that a reader feels overwhelmed or disinterested in the world by appropriately establishing small parts of it here. You have your into that world. We have Sieve, we have Baldric, we also have Idris Elba, who is introduced to us as Sieve's brother. And on the page before this we had Gimli. It's very well done. Thor goes into space to see what is going on, and he is attacked by the ship, and then he is able to get inside of it where he is attacked. But before we found out by what, let's also look in at our arch enemy, Tom Hiddleston. I didn't realise, but straight off the bat, Simon Waltonson redesigned this character. The most important part of this issue, nay, this run, is not any of the stuff I've already mentioned, but the introduction of Laura, Amanda the Enchanter's sister. What I found interesting was they don't mention her relation at all in this first appearance. She was also visually based on Debbie Harry. She is the most important character in Thor mythos because in about 20 issues' time, she outright rapes Thor on panel, and it is brilliant. It was the first time I saw it in a comic even, the art of moondragoning, when a beautiful woman rapes a man. I was wanking over this run for a good few weeks after I had finished reading it. That plotline left the most lasting impression on me, obviously. Our other new character, far less exciting than Laura, is some alien guy called Beta Ray Cyrus. He was on board the spaceship and now he is going to fight Thor. I do want to point out, originally, as seen here, Beta Ray Cyrus was brown. For the interiors of this first issue, he is brown. He is orange next issue. He was orange in the recolouring. They correctly had him brown in the Masterworks. R.I.P. Masterworks and Ozzy Osbourne. And as the pair battle, I'll point out that Beta Ray Cyrus is written very villainous in this. Here's what I reckon happened. Beta Ray Cyrus was originally designed as an adversary through and through. Based on this first script, that would seem apparent. He is coloured orange on this issue's cover, and this was actually heavily promoted. Beta Ray Cyrus was a huge selling point. What have they done to the mighty Thor? I think ultimately Beta Ray Cyrus was such an effective sales hook that his trajectory as a character was maybe changed when they realised he was popular or he had worked for selling the book. During the fight, Thor is reverted to Donnie Wall Blake. He is separated from his magic hammer for too long. And then Beta Ray Cyrus's ship lands on Earth, which is where we get the big thing that the cover and all the advertisements spoiled, and everyone goes in knowing. Beta Ray Cyrus lifts Thor's magic hammer. He lifts the hammer and receives the power of Thor. He then starts offering some even heavier villain declarations. I was really taken aback by how Beta Ray Cyrus acts in this. FYI, I have not read these since the first time I read them, which was over 10 years ago. Looking forward to re-exploring them on here. Right, so here is another way. This is excellent. Beta Ray Cyrus is the first character outside of Thor and Anthony Hopkins to ever lift Thor's magic hammer. This is another brilliant hook by Simon Waltonson. Why is this alien guy able to lift Thor's armour. It was almost an unwritten rule that only Thor could lift Thor's armour. And Simon Waltonson goes into his run with a big, well, why don't we have someone else lift it? And it's such a great opening salvo, a game changer, really. Technically, Steppenwolf lifted it, but that was stupid. Roger Thompson being cutesy-poo with the wording. It shouldn't count. And Ginger Thor, he never actually lifted the hammer. He instead had Thor's magic belt and Thor's magic gloves. Before Beta Ray Cyrus can conquer Earth, Sir Anthony Hopkins appears and announces that Thor's presence is required in Fairyland, and so spirits him away, but doesn't realise that Thor is no longer Thor. Beta Ray Cyrus has taken his hammer and effectively become Thor. So Beta Ray Cyrus is transported to Fairyland, leaving behind a defeated Donnie Wallblake without his powers, without his armour, and that's what I call a Midgard life crisis. That's right, a Midgard life crisis. People have talked about this run a lot. I try not to waste time going over things that I feel others have said better. But this is such a special moment in Thor comics. The way Simon Waltonson approaches and revitalised Thor. Everyone knows it's great, but what they are not saying, what I think needs saying, is that this isn't just a great Marvel superhero book. It is, but I think Simon Waltonson and what he did with Thor, it should be in the same conversation as Watching Men or Van Morrison. It is at that level. I have to really give this its 7 thumbs up.